Here we are.
Here we are again. So, welcome to today's wine tasting. We're going to be walking through the wines of Patriti. Well, some of the wines of Patriti.
You didn't say there's going to be exercise involved.
No, there's no exercise involved in this. But look like exercises involved
Not really
in this.
walking there, are we?
No. But welcome to today, where we're going through with the novice, the knowledgeable one, and well, the know-it-all.
The know-it-all.
Yes. I actually realised that giving myself that name was a really bad move. So, Patriti wines. These are from South Australia, particularly around Adelaide. The history of Patriti wines. Giovanni Patriti was amongst the first Italian immigrants to arrive in 1925 in South Australia. He was 25 years old. He left from the port of Genoa, left his Piedmonte village. So Piedmonte is up in the top northwest of Italy. And he believed he was going to America to meet his sister. Instead, he ended up in Adelaide. That's a bit of a different place, really, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit off.
Yes. And I actually thought, when I heard that, I went, that's ridiculous. How's that possible? But then I followed up with with not a word of English to his name, Giovanni managed to swiftly gain employment. That's impressive. Anyway, he changed his Italian name to the more Australian name called John. Had a number of different jobs and began selling ice cream at the gates of the Botanic Gardens in Adelaide. So a year later, though, he was leasing vineyards in the Brighton district. Now, that's just about 15k south of Adelaide City, in now the city of Marion, and was making wine for new Australians. By the 20s, he owned a number of acres of vineyards and built a winery with his best friend Cristano, or Jimmy Bisaccia. And from the 20s to the 60s, they were predominantly producing dry red wines and fortified wines, which is kind of normal because that was what Australia was known for, was more fortified wines than anything else.
What year was that?
That was from the 20s to the 60s.
Okay.
But out of the need for diversity, in the 70s, they came up with an ingenious and resourceful solution that makes them a point of difference for more than 40 years. They released 100% natural, non-alcoholic, sparkling grape juice from wine grapes.
Yummy.
Some years later, apple juice was introduced.
Later?
Yeah.
Wait, more apple juice?
Yeah.
Would they have been making ciders before apple juice?
I would have thought so, because there would have been a fairly strong English background, but obviously these are Italian, and cider is not something that they really chase for.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that 100% natural, non-alcoholic, that's very non-Italian, isn't it? Yeah.
That's why I have to leave Italy.
Yeah. So I don't drink wine.
Yeah.
Since the 2000s, they shifted their focus toward premium wines and adopted new rare grape varieties. And I can attest that there are quite a few new grape varieties that they've put in, some of which have only just been released by CSIRO in the last 10 years.
Is that to Australia or worldwide?
To Australia. So there's quite a few. We'll talk about one of them today, but we'll also probably meant to touch on another one as well that we were discussing. He's been awarded the coveted Red 5-star winery status by international wine icon James Halliday, and receives 90 points for multiple wines in consecutive vintages. They've got their flagship Shiraz is called the JPB, which launches the arrival of Giovanni Patriti and has gained an impressive 97 points. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, most of the vineyards that I've been reading about, they've got one in Marion, that's not McLaren Vale. It's more McLaren Vale than anything else, but it's not McLaren Vale and it's not Barossa. So this is kind of a non-appellated region. So they're not one of the few vineyards in that area, I'm guessing. But Blewett Springs is where they have a pretty large plot. I think it's, according to this, it's the Lot 3 Elliott's Road. So they bought that, and that's in the north part of Maslin, so Maslin Beach, which is the area I was trying to remember yesterday.
Where's that?
So McLaren Vale.
Oh, okay.
It's in McLaren Vale. So McLaren Vale's broken into things like Clarendon Hills, Blewett Springs, Maslin Beach, amongst other. There's a couple of other ones in there. Chalk Hill, Kangaroo Road, those kind of things are all around there. Just change of aspect in there and soil type. And McLaren, as I said before, McLaren Vale's got probably one of the most diverse soil and subsoil types in any region in Australia and probably the world. Because when I was down there, I was talking to them. They said it's kind of like a massive area of different regions got crushed into one small area. So essentially there's so many different subsoils and soil types. And they actually created the single site project, which I believe is now defunct, but it was a really interesting idea that every winemaker makes a wine without the use of oak, just to show what the subsoil and soil type was, and that actually lists that on the bottle. And I knew there was a lot of winemakers involved in it, but I think it kind of...
They gave up.
Yeah, they kind of gave up because it really wasn't nailing it, but it was a really interesting thing for wine nerds like me to look into.
Doesn't sound ultimately profitable though.
Oh, it's not right. It was more of an educational thing than a profitability thing.
Yeah, but unless everyone's doing it, like, it makes no sense.
Well, the people that were doing it were all the big ones: Gangara, Hedonist, Tatachilla. Pretty much everyone was doing it.
So they sort of went by the same recipe, but let the
essentially, but let the area express.
Yeah.
You know, so that was like we did for the Shiraz night. But I think there was a few people who tried to. I don't know if they tried to game the system or something like that, but they were making wines and people accused them of doing other things, and finally I think the whole thing fell apart, which is a shame because it was a great idea.
So without the use of oak, is the wine...
Literally you're looking at the grapes.
Yeah.
Grapes made, pressed, made, and that's it. Without any secondary characters apart from maybe malolactic fermentation.
Yeah.
That's
but
it.
you couldn't, like, from the... like picking late in the harvest and things like that. With that,
you still pick at the appropriate time.
Yeah.
So if you felt your wines needed more juiciness, more fruit, then you would do that. That's okay. That's kind of alright.
Yeah.
But it was more to do with the fact that people were supposedly putting secondary winemaking in there, and so there's a bit of it. It's just typical.
You wouldn't want them to be acid adjusting.
But it seems like with
they
wine,
have to. They'd have to acid adjust. Yeah.
But it seems like with wine, there's so many constant variables.
There are lots of variables. The idea of non-interventionist wine, whilst is really, really intriguing, is kind of, I don't know, man. We're talking about the natural wine movement now, which is not one of my strong suits, and it's certainly not one of my loves. So yeah, I'm going to go with but they also own some vineyards in Tatachilla, 181 Branson Road. They also the main vineyard there is their Marion Vineyard, which is known as the Garden of Adelaide. Rich fertile soils, produced vegetables, fruits, grapes. In the 1950s, the demand for housing saw much of the land converted to residential allotments and dwellings, with only a few tiny vineyards remaining. So the Marion Vineyard's over 100 years old and a reminder of the history of the district. And that's happened quite a lot. If you've had a look at Adelaide, so if you're in Adelaide City and you decide to go to McLaren Vale, you drive and you're in suburb, vineyard, suburb, and next you're in McLaren Vale.
Yeah. I always thought it was further, but it wasn't
it wasn't that far.
You think it'd be like farming lots kind of thing?
You'd think so, yeah, because normally whenever you travel anywhere else, like going from Christchurch to Marlborough, you're driving into Marlborough and it's like vineyards, house, and then you go into Marlborough or Redmark or Blenheim or Redmark, wherever you're going to be. But this one is, and I was talking to winemakers and they've lost vineyards upon vineyards because, particularly to the 80s and 90s, or mainly the 80s, people were developing all that area down there.
Yeah.
And now people go,
let's all go and live where the vineyards are.
Yeah, let's go live in amongst the vineyards.
There's no vineyards.
There's no vineyards anymore, yeah. That's just a little whinge that we have up here in Maleny as well, really. Not so much about vineyards, but the same sort of thing. Wonderful green belt. That's now a development, housing development. That's lovely. So yeah, that actually happened all the way through. Now, back in 2006, the City of Marion decided the last operational winery in the district, which is Petriti, should be given the responsibility of caring for the vineyard. So they now own or take custodian of the vineyard with great pride. James Mungle has joined the business and taken over the winemaking duties since 2004. He's joined by friend oenological classmate Ben Hyde in 2006. James Mungle's actually the grandson of Giovanni. So it's a really family-driven business. He's actually the son of Inez Petriti, who's the daughter of Giovanni. And let's have a look at that. Ben he was part-time working there in Petriti in 2002. And then in 2006 he came in and restructured the winemaking department. Was asked to rejoin the business as a winemaker and did a short stint in McLaren Vale. And he returned to the historic winery at Dover Gardens. So there's been a very long history involved with this wine, which means, well, which would suggest to me that I should know a lot more about it than I do.
I've never heard of it before.
And I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah, until we had the tasting.
Until we had the tasting, Dan Gentle came and said, try these wines, and we said, okay, we'll have a look at them. I was obviously pleasantly surprised for doing them, and but I knew nothing about them, and I found out they've never been in Queensland before. They sell generally off events and functions that they do, and the local sort of wine scene in South Australia, and a little bit into Melbourne and a tiny bit in the city. So
a lot of cellar door stuff.
A lot of cellar door, I should imagine. So I'm going to go with.
Is this a COVID type thing where like they've just come onto the retail market now?
In Queensland?
Yeah.
No, I don't know about that. I'm not that au fait with it, but I do know that it's the first time they've ever entered into Queensland, and they did approach, Dan at his wine distribution company to sell it. So yeah, maybe might be actually.
Yeah.
Need to spread out a little bit more because the restaurants and wedding functions and stuff would have almost stopped down there.
Because I can't imagine they've had bumpy yields that they've got excess and they need to like start looking for other retailers kind of thing. But
yeah, well, retail has pretty much been consistent through this COVID period. So yeah. Anyway, so we'll have a look at the wines. Now they've got several different levels, but we've chosen ones all about the same price point. From their, what is that?
Is this a state range or?
It's their estate range, but this is their merchant series, I think it's called. So we got this one in because we're looking at building up our alternative white section because we found some absolute humdinging alternative whites, and this is a Vermentino. So
12.5%.
Yeah, 12.5%, which is nice. So, Pat, tell us all your knowledge on Vermentino. Well done, Pat.
That's about it.
Dan,
it's a firm.
Yeah.
Where did it originate from?
Sardinia.
Right, couldn't have told you that.
Yeah.
So, the first time I had one was from a winery called Pala Crapidis in Sardinia. I found it to be quite fruit forward, a little bit of salinity in there. And a really crisp finishing acid. So
it's usually, I've found the Vermentinos in there, usually a bit more body to it.
Yeah, textural. Textural palate. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe not body.
See, like when we had this the other day, it was the first time I've had a Vermentino.
Yeah.
And
I've had a few.
Yeah.
It's got a really lifted, perfumey sort of note to it. So
I can smell the acid. Like the acid smells a lot stronger than what it is when you drink it.
I don't know if that's the acid. Oh, I suppose yeah, it would be because acid is quite pungent with that sort of flavours.
Yeah, and then it's like kind of old, overripe stone fruit smell.
Well, according to their tasting note, which I think is pretty accurate, lifted aromatic, complex notes of citrus, passion fruit, peach, and nectarine. Yeah. Creamy textural palate, well integrated flavours of citrus, white peach, and ashy pear.
So there be any mallow in there, or?
I don't think so. Well,
it's kind of got a buttery kind
it's got some
texture
sort of
to it.
it's got sort of buttery texture. Maybe it undergoes partial mallow, but the ones I've had beforehand have been similar to this, but a lot crisper with the acidity, and that's because it's old world as well. But I was quite pleasantly surprised with this one. This is a nice little sort of between a rich Chardonnay and a Sauv Blanc.
Yeah.
Except it's got the fruits of those much more pleasant fruits, almost like Pinot Gris.
But it's got the body of like a Chardonnay. Like it's actually got a lot.
It does have a lot of mouthfeel to it. Yeah. That's a cracking little wine. I really like that.
Yeah.
And it goes well with everything from seafood to charcuterie plate that we have now. Yeah, it's a great little one. In fact, I envisaged that with some of my chicken dishes that I put together. That's a beautiful one. Yeah, I'm impressed, guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, but I loved it the other day.
There you go, just tick.
Yeah. I loved it the other day. I still love it now.
I really like the Chardonnay from this.
It's not a super crisp finish.
Did Petriti do a Chardonnay?
They do. We tried it, and it was nice, but it sort of fit into the same category as we've got quite a few other Chardonnays.
Yeah, because I suppose like Chardonnay is such a like competitive market that you have to go above and beyond, and then for the price point, it's
well, it actually hit the same sort of price points as Allendale did. So about the $25 mark.
Yeah.
And the wine was actually pretty good. And I'm like, oh, okay, I could really look at doing something with this. But I found it was just a little, just literally fell into that category where I've already covered off for the most part.
Yeah.
But that being said, though, I think in the future we might actually review the Chardonnay again, and there might be some shuffling around of some SKUs.
Sounds like some long
Chardonnays.
Yeah.
So
we might do
a long training days.
Yeah, we'll have a nice long training day of benchmark. That's all we'll do. We'll benchmark the Chardonnays. We'll get a blind taste of benchmark Chardonnays. Anyone here that doesn't know what benchmarking is, essentially what it is, and it's really important to do in any business, honestly, is if you have a product, put it up against other products in the same price point and category, preferably blind, operate them or try them, and then see which one you like the most, and then actually reveal it and see which one you thought was the best for the money. I do that with wineries as well. I actually get wineries. I've had a winery maker. That's a $40 Cabernet or a $50 Cabernet, and I go, cool. Let's get some $50 Cabernets and check that out. And what I end up doing is I actually end up putting in some $30 and some,
a couple of ringers,
a couple of lower end ringers that are usually pretty good. And if that wine shines at $50, great. But if it sort of falls into the mix of everything else, then maybe you need to reevaluate how much you want to get yourself.
But it's got to be a regional thing as well, though.
Yeah, it's usually going to come out of the same. Well, yes,
you're not going to compare a Coonawarra like Cabernet with a Margaret River.
Depends on the price point now. If your price point and there's a certain level of commoditisation when it comes to wine. I know everyone says wine is unique and individual, but you do get a commodity level at about the $15 and under. It's more commodity driven, so therefore, is it a good? Don't care where it's from. Is it a good one? And if it is good, great. If it's a $25 wine, try to put it in the same regionality, but don't be afraid to throw a couple of other ones from either better regions, or actually better regions is better. Because what actually happens is
on the varietal.
Yeah, on the varietal. Yeah. Because if you go, I want my Coonawarra Cabernet is $50. Well, let's just say my Barossa Cabernet is $50. My Coonawarra Cabernets, let's throw a couple of those in, but we'll throw other Barossa Cabernets in as well. And if the Coonawarra Cabernet stand head and shoulders above it, then okay, realise when it goes into a bottle shop that people are going to go, oh, I'll grab my Coonawarra Cabernet.
Yeah.
But if you can go, hey, we tried these against these, or if the winemaking benchmark against those, that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of checking out. You've got to put it against several different tick boxes.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy thing to do, and it's very hard. It's actually a little heartbreaking sometimes for winemakers. And it can be really heartbreaking for me because generally I buy the dozen wines to put up against it. And if the wine shines, if I say, yeah, that's a great wine, that's fantastic, and we benchmark, and if I think this is going to be worth the $50, and he goes, yep, he'll buy the wines for it and benchmark it. Or if I think, no, it's not really worth $50, I'll buy the wines for it. Anyway, so Vermentino though, that's really nice. In fact, I like it. It's got this sort of finish at the back, like
it's got a drying acidity.
It's got a drying acidity, but it's also got this slightly confectionery note that comes into it. It's like just
like an Allen's lolly kind of thing.
Like an Allen's lolly just comes in the back. It's like, oh, that's really nice. Just a hint of something.
To me,
part of the texture.
Yeah, it is.
To me, that's like it's got a lot of like Christmas fruits to it.
Christmas fruits.
Yeah, well, like the stone fruits that come along Christmas time. Like I can imagine drinking that like Christmas morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, chewing on an apricot.
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't go well together, actually.
Chewing on an apricot.
Apricot and the wine.
I will say, as I'm pouring these wines, these are all really well made wines in that they're clear, they're not hazy. They've actually spent a bit of time
Very light
cold
colour.
stabilisation. Yeah, no, but these are meant to look that colour. And the nose is on point. The flavour profile's there. I'm thinking it's whoever's James Mungle and Ben are obviously doing a good job. So this is the Adelaide Hills Pinot Grigio. So obviously they're drawing this. So this is the Merchant Series. From Patriti, Giovanni, just chat through there. Adelaide Hills, here we go. So yes, it's got a reputation for cool climate wines, which is going to be why it's just a Pinot Grigio, not a Pinot Gris. Vintage, remember for challenges. So this is 2020. Now, do you remember what we said about 2020 vintage? Particularly for Barossa.
Very small.
Very, very small. So crop levels are low.
But still have pretty rich fruits.
In some cases, really low. Extreme weather throughout the season. Frost, drought, heat, bushfires in many regions.
They had everything.
They gave a good nudge, didn't they? Yeah. Fortunately, cool and near perfect conditions late in the season allowed for slow, even ripening, which is great. Hand-picked from the single site in the Adelaide Hills. So I'm guessing they probably bought this in because I don't know their own wineries up there, other vineyards up there. So and I do like the fact that they give a nice tasting out here as well. And like a skin contact, none. Oak, none. Barrel maturation, none. Winemaker, and then this gives you acidity and sugar levels. So
it's just a nice crisp pear and again stone fruit.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the same sort of fruit.
Yeah.
But gee, the
This one's
pear
a lot
and
more
that's
pear.
just, which is classically what Pinot Grigio is. I've had a lot of Pinot Grigios recently that are looking with sort of from that Nashi pear sort of thing all the way to stone fruit. And it's just like I actually was concerned. I said, "Are you sure this is Pinot Grigio?" Like, yeah, that's right, yeah. So I tried it, and flavours are pleasant, but weren't exciting. But this one here, this is straight out pear, Nashi pear. It's only sitting at about 12% alcohol, which is really good because it's not over hot.
The acidity is really low.
Acidity is quite, well, the acidity is actually sitting according to this. pH is 3.2, which is not too bad.
But it doesn't have that really long acidic finish.
Yeah, no, it's not burning.
An unpleasant acidic finish that you get with some of the Pinot Gris.
Yeah,
So it's balanced.
Pinot Grigio, yeah.
It takes the oil stuff and coming out of the antipasta.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That is again really good. $25, I think, approximately.
Only thing that disappoints me with these is their labels.
Yeah, they got really. Now, for me, I'm in agreement with you, mate.
I'd love to see the picture that's under all that writing. There's a ship and obviously part of the
I'd
story.
say that's actually Giovanni's ship that he came in on.
Probably.
It looks like a black, redacted picture.
It does.
There's something going on.
You know what it reminds me of?
Bars.
Do you remember those Italian movies that happened in the 70s?
Yeah.
Where they came across.
Across the screen.
It came across. That's it. That is exactly it.
But it's broken up, so it's Pat.
Yeah.
Pat Riti, isn't it? Two.
P-A-T. Yeah, it's hard to tell. R-I-T-T-I. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who their marketing is, but maybe they should have a revisit of that at some point.
It is eye-catching though. It does stand out, I reckon.
It took me a while to get that it was.
Yeah, it is. Because if you did just have the picture there, it'd be a bit 19 Crimes looking.
Yeah.
But I still think the Patriti, they've got Patriti there. It looks very, very good. So we've got the Patriti label there, which is great. It's actually good font, good size. The rag's nice. The back rag's fine. It's got all the various things you need to say.
So this one's a bit more, I think it's a bit easier to see, the Patriti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
it's only a smaller picture.
Only a smaller picture there, yeah. But I just think maybe their marketing probably just use a little touch up. That being said, though, it's more about the booze for us than it is about the marketing. Yeah. Although that being said, though, it really helps when you've got good marketing behind it.
Yeah, a nice picture always does well.
Yes. So that's really lovely. it does have a little bit of residual sugar in it, and being at 12%, it was going to.
That's right. Makes it easier to drink.
Just a touch of sugar in there too.
Yeah, I'm just surprised with like. It just seems like such little acid to me. Like, yeah.
Well, the acidity is there. It's just not a searing acidity as you're expecting. And that's actually quite lovely. The fruit is really bright, which means the acidity is quite high anyway. One of the things that happens when you actually have higher acidity, the fruit is brighter and more vibrant, which is why when wines age and the acidity begins to drop away, the fruit doesn't look as bright and as vibrant.
Yeah. Yeah, I get like that, like, I don't know, it's like rind of a watermelon kind of thing. Like, just, yeah, it seems like that really kind of green acidity.
You're going for some more of that, aren't you?
I think my glass is too small.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, you guys got the large glasses last time, so I gave myself the large glass this time.
I found it didn't go so well with the blue.
No.
That was wrong. Maybe some slimy.
Actually, we didn't say, but Vermentino, again, comes from the Adelaide Hills. So I'd say they must have a very good relationship with someone in the Adelaide Hills. I know that there's a couple of things happening at the moment. Cachamardio is, I believe, selling his vineyards.
Really?
Yeah. Whether he sells them to his son, I'm not sure. So Daniel Amadio.
Yeah.
But that's Cash has got a massive area of vines. He's one of the major grape growers in Adelaide Hills. Yeah, there's a few things happened up in Adelaide Hills recently. Some very sad. A really lovely couple who owned a vineyard that was it's really renowned. Basically, he passed away just recently. Well, actually, probably recently in COVID years recently. So yeah, not from COVID. He actually passed away from a heart attack. But yeah, it was quite heartbreaking for some of the people in that area. And I always happened to be there at the time, and I was talking to them, and they were really, it was just out of the blue, quite shocked. But it seemed to have been sick for a while and hadn't actually let anyone know. It's one of those things that someone who's really not well decided that they weren't going to burden others. And yeah. So when particularly the winemaker I know that I was talking to about it, he was a little bit, he was stunned and a little bit upset by that. So there's been a lot of changes happening in Adelaide Hills recently. I mean, not to mention the massive change with Bridgewater Mill a couple of years back being sold to Accolade then on selling the vineyards. Brian Croze's Tapper Napa has been doing really well with its wines, but he's changed a few things around the place as well. It's been a really intriguing time. But I was up there in the Adelaide Hills, and I was really quite surprised how vibrant the area was. Though a lot of young people have been moving up there. A lot of new money has been going into the hills as well. Yeah, beforehand the Adelaide Hills was very Eden Valley, like, sort of unpaved roads and a lot of farmers and a lot of people like that. And
older generation.
Yeah, older generation. Now I went through it. It's been a couple of years since I was there. It's been 5-6 years since I was there last, and I'm going through going, my God, look at this. And still lots of plots of open land and lots of farms and things like that, but there was like this wonderful new pub that we went to and all of these like very Montville-like sort of setups. It was really, really intriguing, yeah. So, yeah, I was really quite impressed with the Adelaide Hills. Now I'm guessing, unless they own a vineyard there, which I don't think they do, but I'm not 100% certain, they're sourcing, which is not unusual. I mean, you're mad not to source out of a great region like that to make particularly the whites.
For what you need.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a 2020, so it's pretty fresh too.
Yeah, fresh. Love. Actually, I will say, I really like the freshness on this. It's clean, it's crisp, it's delightful. And now we're going to go straight away from that into a McLaren Vale Cabernet. You want to have some water there, Dan? So, all right, Pat. I'll ask you quickly. What defines McLaren Vale Cabernet for you?
I look at this pretty much like the middle ground of Cabernet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's got the tannin from like not the same tannin as Coonawarra, but it's still got like plenty of tannin. It's got the smooth, well-roundedness of like a Margaret River. To me, it kind of sits perfectly in the middle of like the extremes in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I like it. It's just the most well-balanced Cabernets I see generally.
Yeah, okay. That's on. Dan, what about yourself?
I still look for the dewy richness of
Yeah.
fruit from McLaren Vale. The pepper, maybe. Well, not so much pepper, but a little bit of spice.
Mm-hmm.
And a gentle sort of tannin.
Yep.
Not a...
I think that's probably the biggest call for that one is McLaren Vale being a very fruit-driven region. The Cabernet is going to show lots and lots of blackberries, lots of jubiness to it. I find it a really good entry gateway into Cabernet because you're coming from Shiraz, which is the tannins are quite soft and rounded. Going into Cabernet, which if you have a Coonawarra is chalky, dry and gripping.
I love that stuff though.
Yeah, McLaren Margaret River doesn't have quite a gripping sort of tannin, but it has big, bold, round, quite rounded tannins. Whereas McLaren Vale is more the fruit-driven style of Cabernet, where you get those blackberries and jubiness, and you get not a soft tannin. It's definitely a tannin that's there, but it's not gripping. It's kind of smooth. Smooth tannin is probably the simplest way to do it. So, really, when it comes to it, for me, McLaren Vale is the gateway of Cabernet, and from there, obviously, you build up. You go to your. If I was walking someone through Cabernet, I would literally start them with McLaren Vale, work them onto Barossa, and then from there, taking them on a journey through Margaret River,
Then end up in Coonawarra.
And then from there on to Bordeaux.
Is Bordeaux much more tannic? Or?
Oh yes.
Yeah. I've still never had like a Cab Franc or a proper Bordeaux.
If you have a Bordeaux, it's acid and tannin, and it's really, really good with food, and probably, if it's been aged well, it's a phenomenal wine. But you are paying the price for a phenomenal wine, especially having a Medoc.
$30 a bottle. Or?
Multiply that by 10.
Oh.
I literally went in. I was walking through, and it's in Bordeaux. Went to this lovely little town, actually Saint-Emilion, through it, and I went past a winery. It said Chateau Petrus, and I went, oh yeah, Chateau Petrus, and it was 1,900 euros, and I went, oh my god, that's expensive. And then I worked it back in the head, and I was like, that's like $3,500 Australian
For a bottle.
for a bottle, and it was an 18-year-old Chateau Petrus, and I'm like, okay, well that's interesting. That seems a bit excessive, but that's fine. And then I discovered that was a bargain basement price,
That's terrible.
and I'm like, whoa.
And that's where it's made.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can
it's
understand
not.
maybe you're in
Does it come with
Australia.
a gold
and go,
bar strapped to it or something?
No, it is just one of those iconic wines that you people out there are getting a winery to hold wine in France, in Bordeaux particularly. If they're holding a wine every year, that wine goes up in price
So,
every year.
so I've got a question.
Yes.
So, what is the most expensive wine in the world?
That would be Domaine Romani Conti.
Yeah.
That's a Burgundian Pinot Noir.
Yeah. Is it that price because of the winemaking, or is it like they expect that kind of like it just?
Do they only make one bottle of it?
No. I
A
think
little bit of that. So Domaine Romani Conti is essentially off the best plot in the best vineyard, and that is universally known as the best vineyard. It also makes only a very small amount of the wine. The wine itself has been tasted and rated by every single person of note as being the best wine in the world.
So my question was,
You'd have to
okay, so with the way science is going,
Yes.
if they could recreate that bottle of wine
Yep.
down to the atom,
Yep.
would it fetch that much price if you could make it for $10 a bottle?
No.
So it's just from the
Remember, wine is not just a commodity. Remember when we were talking about
Yeah.
commoditization? So when it comes to it, wine isn't just a commodity. You're not just buying. If you're just
the
buying
best,
fermented,
the best tasting
yeah,
wine.
if you're just buying fermented grape juice,
Yeah.
that's a commodity. If you're buying, even if you buy the best fermented grape juice of Cabernet grape, that's a commodity. And therefore, if you can get that tasting as good at a $10 wine as you are from a $50 wine, then that's great. That's the commoditization area. But you're not just buying it. You're actually buying, if you pull out a bottle of Domaine Romani Conti, or DRC as it's known, and you put that on the table at a dinner party of anybody but Bogans,
That's a stash play.
people just go, oh my god. That's like pulling out a bottle of Grange and going, yeah, we have to drink some of this tonight. It's a massive call. It also means that, A, you've managed to get hold of it, because the only way to buy this wine is generally to be on the wine list, the wine list for it. Or you bought it in the second-hand market for an obscene amount of money. Like that, it sells for 15 grand.
Yeah.
Is the wine, do you think the wine, well remember, wine is still a personal taste. So, whilst I...
See, if I paid 15 grand for a bottle of wine,
Yep.
it's going to taste good whether it does or not.
Well, I was going to say that, or you wanted to have some sort of methamphetamine running into it. You'd really need to, you'd want that wow factor. And the thing is, though, people have tried this wine blind and still found the wow factor.
Yeah.
But if you could replicate it, of course it wouldn't be worth quite as much. Unless you go, I bought this wine when I was in the vineyards in France, walking to the vineyards of Domaine Romani Conti. I met the winemaker, or the owner. He said, come back to his place. We drank a bottle of wine, and I felt so wonderful. I bought a bottle, and I wanted to bring it to show you guys.
It's the story.
It's a story behind it. And if you look to the wine is more than just a product that you go, oh, we're going to get pissed on tonight. 4X Gold is a product, or 4X Bitter is a product, you can go, I'm just going to get pissed on tonight. No one cares.
And then you get Crown Lager.
Crown Lager, well,
Yeah, the premium.
which is VB repackaged.
Golden VB.
Yeah, golden
Yeah.
VB. But you are looking at a product that has a history, has a story, has people, actually has real people behind it. So this is...
It's still owned by a bank though, isn't it?
No, Domaine Romani Conti's owned, family owned.
Oh really?
Yeah,
It's must be only one of the only like.
No, there's quite a lot of...
There's a Burgundian one, isn't it?
Yeah, Burgundian one. There's a lot of vineyards that have been bought over the years by AXA, Tau, and other big companies.
And they for investment.
Investment purposes only. They don't give a rat's ass. They just buy the vineyard. They don't want anything other than the net profit from the vineyard to come through. And really, they're buying the vineyard as a stake, which they know is too big to fail. So they spent $300 million on a vineyard in Alès-Corton in Burgundy. It wasn't even a big vineyard, but it's the only one that's moved in the last 10 years. The only one that's sold in the last 10 years. And they've gone, that is worth so much, like $300 million. That's a lot of money. So probably is the vineyard the best vineyard you can ever have? Well, maybe not. Who knows? It depends on how it's worked and what effort's gone into it. And
Rosa's coming in 15 minutes.
yeah, the whole thing. It's actually the gamut of everything put together. Just because it's owned by someone who happens to own it, it's still the people involved in that make the wine.
Would that go up on the market? Would people own shares in it?
No. No way. They would literally, they haven't been able to, I haven't heard of anyone floating vineyards, but that's not a bad idea, is it? Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can start looking at putting together a vineyard purchasing group.
Start buying them back.
Yeah, start buying them back. It'd be lovely. But So yeah, essentially what I'm saying is that wine is not just a commodity. I've argued with people that it can be a commodity, and I mean, especially when you're looking at bulk produced wines by big companies, yes, it is a very commoditized thing, but generally this is why the wine community, and I'm talking everything from governmental controls all the way to mum and dads, all talk about regionality, they all talk about history, they all talk about the vintage. So they talk about a myriad of things that are more than just that.
Grape juice.
If it's fermented grape juice you want, we have casks for you. But
Stop
stop it. If you actually want to drink something and you learn about the people behind it and try the wines, I mean, hell, okay, if I say to you McLaren Vale and I say the word Walter
Clackers from
Hedness Wines, and what do? We remember all the good times we've had with Walter.
Yeah.
You know, and that brings back a myriad of memories.
They have another one, it's on broth, so it's called Brock and Jack.
Yeah, Brock and Jack, I've heard about that too.
Never been there.
Yeah. You'll be going there soon.
Hopefully we get some William Frederick soon.
That's just one's over there.
Oh.
We'll have to do a tasting on it at some point.
Yeah. 4 bottles, see if they all taste the same.
But
Let's check the regionality on
Yeah.
actually, I realised we've
This
just
is
gone
my-
completely off the point. We're actually on the Cabernet.
Yes.
So, McLaren Vale Cabernet. Let's go back to that. So, McLaren Vale Cabernet from Petriti.
It's got that expected
Yep.
juby rich.
Oh, it is.
Beautiful
That
fruit.
nose, and that's just
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's lovely.
Yeah, it's like mulberries and like
Mulberries and blackberries,
Yeah.
there's no green stalk in this, which is a double thumbs up for me.
Yeah,
I'm getting.
I don't like that from Margaret River at the moment.
Yeah, it's. I don't like it. They have changed that a little bit now. They've moved away from that, which is good.
Thank God.
God, which is not nice.
Yeah. To a city.
This makes your mouth water.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
The acidity
Nice
and
and,
tannin
nice
is
and
lovely.
drying, like perfect. This is a perfect.
Actually, I will say the tannins on this, some of the more drying and grippier tannins that I've had in a McLaren Vale, but it's still rounded and still lovely
Yeah.
and smooth. But goddamn, that's nice.
Mm.
That's a really.
No, that's like a proper dinner wine. Like
it is. Yeah.
like a nice steak dinner.
Mm. Yeah, no, I have to say that's a
Mm.
that's a nice little humbling. Well,
And for how much?
$25.
$25, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's up with Zonti's footsteps and
Yeah,
like those two can go
yeah,
arm in arm with each other.
yeah. I'd say that's a little that's a cracker, and it is 14.5% alcohol, but that's what I'm really surprised about because I'm not getting the alcohol heat.
Yeah, you don't get that warming.
You get a bit on the nose.
Yeah, I'd get a little bit on the nose.
It'd probably open up,
Mm.
and then we'd get to crack it.
Yeah, I suppose, but let's have a look. I'm just having a look at the winemaking notes of this. Okay, so, yep, bone dry, pH 3.3, 14.5% alcohol. Here we go, 27% new French oak, and that shows. That really shows.
Is that what gives it that
Yeah,
softness?
that's what gives it that punch of vanillins and cedar notes in there. And the rest of the oak is seasoned French and American oak. Oh, I love American oak. Yes. And it's been 15 months in barrel. So they've spent some serious dollars and
For a
time.
$25 bottle of wine,
For a $25
like, that's a lot of wine making
That's-
effort.
They'll put the price up.
Yeah, I don't know, it's $35 wine. It's $35 wine
Yeah.
they're selling, yes.
Yeah, it's really cheap for a $45
$5
bottle of
wine.
wine.
But no, that's a cracker. That's really good. I think we might actually have to dig deeper into this winery at some point
Mm.
and have a look at.
So that's their estate range? Or?
Yeah. Do you mind if I get one of your phones?
That
Your
one
phone.
just went flat.
Yours just went flat.
Yeah, what do you
Can
want
you
to
just bring up Patriti's, just Pattirit?
I was already on the page.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Can you bring up now their? Give me their wine list for the merchant. No, I think it's called the merchant, isn't it? So
So
premium
what-
wines and the merchant series, and they've got a wine on here which I would love to. Okay, so,
Chardonnay? Or,
they got the Chardonnay, but they've got a GSM,
oh, yeah, the Grenache Shiraz Mourvedre,
and now that comes out of Blewett. So keep going, and
Pinot Gris, and Sauv Blanc.
Sauv Blanc. No,
Oh, you're probably up to the Sauv Blanc.
No. Yeah, I'm really not after the Sauv Blanc. Go back. Not the Merchant series. It's the other one. Just hit premium wines again. So premium wines, and we're going to have a look. Maybe the Discovery range, which I think that was the Vermentino was the Discovery range. And here we go. This is it.
Jimmy Hat Rose.
Tricadera. Tricadera.
Tricadera.
So Tricadera. This is Deria or Dera?
Tricadera.
Oh, it is. Trincaderia.
Trincaderia.
Yeah, Trincaderia. Which is a Portuguese varietal.
Oh no, they got Saperavi.
Yeah, well.
I still have a nightmare.
Yeah, we still struggle with Saperavi. But Trincaderia, which is actually a Portuguese varietal, we did try it.
Yeah.
Thought it was really interesting, but it was probably a little bit of a hard ask for consumers at the moment. Well, I think it's one that I'd like to actually explore further.
If you can get the port community behind it, because I've actually had a little bit of port since I've had that. I can taste a bit of what I had with that other Tricadero we had the other day. It'd be nice to see other different winemaking skills going into it.
Well, when I was doing my fortified class, we actually had a look at, I think the Big Six, which is, going to get this right, Touriga Nacional, Tinta Riojas, Tinta Bao, Tinta Cow, sorry. No idea. Tinta Franca. Oh, damn it, I can't remember the other two. I passed my exam, I knew them.
Tinta Rocca?
Tinta Rocca? No, it might
Tinta
be.
Rioja.
Tinta Rioja, yeah, it might be. Anyway, so that wasn't a grape that was sitting in there. So that's one of the minor grapes that goes into port. But it was really interesting to see that flavour coming in there. I was really quite impressed. So again, that's something they've got. Not just really good sort of standard wines, but they've also got some really off-the-wall wines, which I think is pretty awesome for a winemaker to do.
That's what they grow on their own vineyard?
I don't. Well, put it this way, I don't know anyone that would grow it commercially. It'd have to be a labour of love by somebody. But yeah, no, I have to say, look, I'm really impressed with the wines, and well, so what do you reckon? Out of those three wines, what was your probably pick of the day? And don't get me wrong, I'm a red wine lover, and I do like Cabernet.
Yeah.
Grigio was really good.
And I love the Vermentino.
I wasn't the biggest fan of the Pinot Gris, to be fair. I just thought I could have done with a little bit more acidity, but I did like the Vermentino. Yep. I thought that was brilliant, especially for a alternate varietal.
Yeah, alternate varietal we've not really shown.
Yeah, but the Cabernet.
The texture in that is nice.
Yeah.
So you like the Cabernet, you like the...
I do like that, but I'm going to take this.
You're going to pick the Cabernet, yeah. And I'm going to go for the Vermentino because I do love the Cabernet, and I think that is an excellent Cabernet. The Vermentino just sort of hit a whole bunch of tick boxes for me.
Yeah.
So
not TikTok boxes.
TikTok boxes, no. But anyway, guys. So thank you for tuning in today, and drink well, drink like a savvy, and cheers.
Cheers.
Plunger.
They make better noises.
They do.